So I'm going to get totally low-tech here and not going to use slides, and I have my notes on paper. And I want to talk about creativity. And this is like a trip back to our root, because deep down, I think that's what makes us really amazing creatures, is we can be creative. We can come up with something new. So who's heard about Muse here? Okay, this is what it looks like. It's an itty-bitty thing. You wear it on your head. Like that. And what it does is it measures your brain activity, and it allows you to get feedback from your mind directly. And it's kind of a mirror for your mind. And when you have this mirror, you can start to learn about how your brain behaves and how you get distracted by things like photographers. Whoa, sorry. So what we do at Muse is actually like it's an intersection between, I would say, computer science, neuroscience, and contemplative science. And by contemplative, I'm referring to meditation. And this is really tapping into our consciousness and learning how we can re-engineer ourselves. And it's a very trippy space with a lot of unknowns, perhaps the most unknowns I've ever encountered. And because of that, creativity is essential. It's essential when you're going into a problem and you have no idea how to begin, to have some techniques that allow you to really make some headway. So what is creativity? Well, I sort of feel like there's the problem solver inside of our head, and this is the one that we educate, and we go to school for years to give it the skills that we need to approach problems with the right tool set. But when it comes to actually that little important inventive step that actually allows us to make some headway, the problem solver is not very useful. In fact, the ideas seem to come from somewhere else. So when I think about this, the first thing I do is I think about when I'm having an idea, or when I look back at ideas that I've had, when do they come? Like, what are those moments where I have that insight that can kind of shift everything? And what I've noticed is I can hammer away on a problem for ages, all day, and not get anywhere, and then I take a trip to the bathroom, and then wham! That's when it hits me, and I have an insight that allows me to like take that next step. I'm off to the races again. So I don't know, we all have replaces. Maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's taking a shower. I know I've racked up huge water bills over the years solving problems. So the thing about the problem solver in our head is the problem solver, in many ways, it knows what's going to happen. And so when you're really attacking things from that state of mind, you're not actually able to take in and be sensitive to new ideas, because you're running the simulation, applying the things that you know, and that really is what flows from our experience. And our experiences are things that we've actually collected over our lives. And there's not actually something new for us there. If you're trying to approach a problem and have a new insight, you have to recognize that this is like what it's like to be a child exploring the world and taking in things for the first time. You have to be open in order to be able to access these things. And so when I think about the important state of mind for me to be most creative, I have to be relaxed. And I have to be curious. So I need less problem solver, more curious explorer. So there was a mention of this gentleman named Steve Mann. He's a pretty wild guy. You can think Doc Brown from Back to the Future. He's basically that guy. And we spent years together creating things. And I learned some really useful things from him. One of those things was the value of rapid prototyping. And this is when you simply build something to test your ideas and to see what happens. And so I can remember him saying to me once, I wrote it down here so I didn't forget. He said, "Chris, let's just build something. It doesn't matter what, let's just build something. And when we do that, we'll be able to see around the next corner." Now, something about that really stuck with me. And really what it speaks to is the fact that when we're just thinking about what we're going to do, we're operating from a limited space, or operating from what we've experienced already. And so when you actually build something and you actually test it in the world, test it with people, now you have an opportunity to experience something new and actually have an insight. Another thing which has really stuck with me comes from my time in high school. And I had my best friend at the time, he was an artist. And he had like some of the most peculiar creative processes. And his technique was to just start tinkering with things. You know, we'd be making music together and he would just start twiddling knobs. And I was just like, this is crazy. But something beautiful would come out. And you know, one of his passions was to find broken technology. And he loved broken technology because when he played with it, something interesting and unexpected would happen. And as an engineer with my kind of mind, at least at the time, I was just like, what's the value of just stumbling into a solution, you know, without being able to create it from the power of your mind? You know, why diddle with something until something cool happens? Well, it took me many, many years, but what I've discovered is the power of tinkering. And when we tinker with things, we actually open ourselves to this really cool possibility of having these surprising happy accidents. And a happy accident is actually that gold. And it's when we go like, whoa, isn't that cool? Or isn't that interesting? And it's those moments, if I look back, those are the moments that actually change the course of everything. And often you get them just by having no plan whatsoever, just diving in and doing something. So Muse wouldn't actually have happened without these evolutions. And in fact, I would say it was a happy accident which caused Muse to happen. And that happy accident came one night when we were sitting in the lab and we built our first neurofeedback experience where we connected our brain through a computer and we tried to control a light with our mind. And it was a really, really simple thing. I didn't know if it was going to work, but it's like, hey, you know, people produce alpha waves. So let's make this thing. If you produce lots of alpha waves, the slider goes up, and if you don't, it goes down. And then if it goes up, we're going to turn a light on. Seemed pretty simple. Well, the happy accident was seeing what happened when you let someone play with such a thing. And what you got was this really cool experience where people would go inside and start playing with their consciousness and trying to experiment with themselves to see, like, what's this experience that I'm feeling and what's happening? And in many ways, this is the foundation of when you get into meditation and mindfulness, this is the practice. It's paying attention to your experience to understand how to work with yourself better. So I'm enormously grateful, and looking at things through a creative eye and paying attention to what makes us most creative, I think is so valuable because it allows us to work with our teams to help foster that same spirit. Thanks.
Questions?
Hi, just have a question regarding Muse. You mentioned the story of how it came to be, but from that point onward to how it came to be today, where it found a home among meditators and among many hackers as well. How did that process came to be? Is there any kind of creative process that drives the product towards there, or was it more of a market-oriented progress?
So more of the same, and also learning from people who are trying to engage with your tech, so a lot of listening. But when we first created it, we didn't know it was going to be a meditation product. We created something that allowed you to connect with your mind, and we thought it was just a tool for self-exploration. In fact, when we came up with the idea of controlling things with your mind, I didn't know what meditation was. And through the process of actually trying to bring this thing to life, part of the process was to figure out, what's the killer application? And so I spent a couple of years playing with this and going through this experience where I was trying to understand what its true value could be. And I used myself as a laboratory experiment to figure that out. And what I discovered in that process, and it was just by chance that I met someone who had a very, very deep meditation practice. And what he allowed me to discover is the thing that I was finding the most value in was actually reflected in thousands of years of contemplative traditions. And it was interesting to all humans who take an interest in their personal development. And so that was one of those happy accidents.
One more question.
Hi. The things you're talking about sound a lot like they allude to the confluence between cognitive science and Buddhism. Are you guys aware of this? And are you drawing from it? Because it sounds like...
Yeah, there's some really beautiful traditions that have come through humanity, and Buddhism is definitely one of them. And we've learned a lot from studying these different traditions. Human beings have dealt with the same problems of being human for a long, long time. So there's so much for us to learn.
Thank you.
Thank you.